Hi there, welcome to Money Talk. I'm Ted David. No matter whether you're a recent grad or looking to change careers, a polished resume often the first step in landing a job interview. Joining us now with some strategies for getting your foot in the door is Steve Provenzano, author of Top Secret Resumes. If you have a question for our guest, call 1-800-752-CNBC. That's 1-800-752-2622. Good to have you back.
Thanks, sir.
I once used your book, helping someone else with a resume, and it was very helpful because the formats are different depending on what kind of job you're looking for. What's perhaps the biggest mistake people make with resumes?
Well, primarily that all they do is they just list their jobs. The first thing, it looks like a work history of their past, just a history of all their jobs. What we try to get people to do with the book and at our service is get people to really sell their skills and their abilities right on top, kind of do the thinking for the employer before they even get to it. Show them right on top, here's how I can help you, these are the skills and abilities I can bring you.
All right, now, there's a little bit of a difference between looking for a new job if you're right out of school and looking for a new job if you are changing careers. So we're going to take a look, it's a two-stage example of the resume. We'll bring up the first half, the top half. This would be a resume now for a new grad. And we're looking at, is that the new grad one?
Yeah, it says administration management on there. I just gave him sort of a title right on top, just to give him some general area. He didn't really know what kind of work he wanted to do himself. So immediately I jumped right in and talked about his main abilities he'd picked up in school, things he'd done, extracted his abilities from all the groups he was in school. He was in fraternities, fundraisers, and he had a lot of experience working with people and setting up different events, coordinating people, supervising people, and I got all those abilities on top and just put them in professional words right on top. But he had just small jobs to get through school. So I extracted the sales and the customer service skills, communications, human relations, got those on top. He sent 20 of these, got 4 interviews and 4 job offers.
Now we got education, which is obvious. Let's look at the second half of this, and again, it's a new grad. We've got
employment near the bottom. These are just summer jobs he had, but he had worked selling clothes in a store, and he worked at a pizza place. But from that, I got from that customer service, sales.
So you're telling the truth attractively, really.
Oh, exactly. Just building it up, because if I had just listed all this, it just looks like, well, here's some summer jobs. But instead, I developed his, sales and communications on top.
All right, let's go, Joel, if we can, to the next one, which is going to be changing career and see how that's different. Now I see all of a sudden we've got a profile at the top.
Yeah, we call it profile. I didn't give him an objective. I left that off. And just still got extracted his best skills and abilities. It was a little easier to do because he had some on the job. A higher level experience, should we say, professional experience. And then just went straight into his jobs. I didn't go into school, of course.
Let's take a look at the second half.
Yeah, school is more near the bottom of this. He said he had done pretty well with this as well. We separated his achievements at the bottom of each job, just offset them with some asterisks, just something to break up the copy so it's not all gray.
How important is it to have the specific dates? I mean, especially if there have been gaps in your work in the change of career situation.
A lot of times you can just get away with using just years, and then that'll just automatically wipe out any gaps in dates that way. We like to use months whenever we can, but if you've got a 6-month gap, I would just use years.
Is that something that's explainable given the economic climate? We're coming out of a recession. Hey, I was out of work for 6 months,
Exactly. I don't think they expect perfection on every resume. They just want to see what you can do for them. And if you can back it up in an interview, that's what matters.
Peter in Alabama, welcome.
Yes, hi there. Love your show. I have a question. Basically, it's a little bit different than your guest is talking about. My case, for example, I'm in my late 30s. I had my own publishing company in the early 80s, literally went bankrupt in the late 80s, and I ran it very successfully. However, for a few years, I basically had to work for other people in the late 80s after my company folded. How do I present myself at the interview, and how do prospective employers look at me?
So you say you had to work for other people. You're saying, was that also in publishing, or that was not?
Basically, for example, I worked at a university at a second-tier job. In other words, the higher-level positions were filled. I had to do more abstract editing, something not a little bit beneath what I was qualified for.
You were, in other words, underemployed.
Exactly, for a few years, almost after I went bankrupt. But the business I had in the early 80s was successful. I had contacts across the country and things like that.
So how do you go from up here to down there to going back to up there?
Yeah. Again, that's a good reason for putting a good summary on top, because in the first couple of bullets in that summary, you can tell them right away your experience in publishing and the areas that you want to get into. That kind of sidetracks them or distracts them from your chronological work history, because the first thing they see is your experience and your abilities in publishing. It doesn't have to be chronological all the time. Then you back that up, and depending on what you have, some people, I even put their older experience first if that's more relevant. You could start right in, you put your summary on top about publishing, your knowledge in that, then go in and list your job as a publisher when you were doing it on your own. Then go ahead and go with the most recent near the bottom. So you always want to hit them with the most relevant first and do the thinking for them. Don't make them have to sift through your entire past to figure it out. If you can do that all for them right on top, it saves them a lot of...
Is there a time when a chronological resume is better?
I like to do those mostly for like attorneys and physicians and maybe high-level finance people because they're still very conservative type industries. I just list it.
Right. Jim in New York, hi.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
I want to know what makes your style of doing a resume any different than any other. Some say to put an objective, some say you should never put an objective, some say to put the dates on the left, some say to put them on the right.
Exactly.
Everybody's got a completely different way of doing it, and I want to know what is really the difference between any of these different styles.
Really, there are so many different styles that it's really hard to say that one is better than any other. We tend to stick with what works, we think, for most people most of the time, and for a person's situation. Like the college grad, some people I just don't do objectives for because they don't really know where they want to go or what they want to do. So I leave it off. If you really do know where you want to go, it's kind of a democratic answer. You know, if you do really know what kind of work you want to get into, then I say by all means put that on top because that shows you've got it together, you know where you want to go. And employers like that too. So it really, again, depends on what's going to work for you. That's really all it boils down to.
Are they going to look more at big names? I mean, you know, a lot of times now you see the ads and it just says, you know, fax resume.
Yeah.
You got to figure somebody's sitting there with a pile of all these curled up fax pages, and if they see GE and they see Westinghouse and so on, that's going to jump out at them. Hey, this is a heavy hitter, as opposed to a bunch of text in which you use all kinds of hyperbole to describe yourself working for the XYZ toy company.
Yeah.
Do you want to, and perhaps to amplify Jim a little bit, do you want to use bold type when you get the big company names, underlined?
I at least underline it, but you could even summarize that in your first summary bullet on top, saying you worked for a Fortune 500 company. Then underneath under your jobs, you spell out right on top the name of the company, and you reinforce that again. Or you can say working for multi-million-dollar operations. I've had people working for companies like that that I've written for. So I try to summarize the scope of their whole background too, the size of companies they've been with. You know.
Chuck in Virginia, welcome.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm kind of curious for a guy like myself who's presently transitioning out of the military into the civilian sector and doesn't necessarily have the appropriate skill stats for the job that I'm trying to get into. What would be some of the most important things to try to glean out of my resume? And in addition to that, do I want to try to go with an objective statement or try to chronological?
Chuck, hang on, two things, because you're going to watch Steve perform magic right here on TV, because we did this once before. Number one, what was your training and what did you do in the service?
I flew helicopters in the service, but I'd like to get into sales and training with an investment banking firm on Wall Street.
Okay, now, how do we turn the chopper
Obviously,
flying?
yeah. Where you want to go is obviously sales and things like that. I talk about all the human relation skills. Did you ever train anyone on the job? If you have experience in motivating people or training people or giving presentations, any sort of technical presentations maybe you had to do in a classroom setting.
He's obviously detail-oriented.
Detail-minded, yeah, that's very good. Anything you can glean at all in terms of your human relations skills, communications, organizational. If you can go ahead and put an objective on there. It says investment banking, something like that. No, there's no law against that. It's whatever you want to do, you can do it. Then just extract all your personal skills, your human relations skills and abilities from all the things you've done in the military. Extract all those abilities and get those right on top first. That's going to put you far ahead than people. If you just list military right on top, it may be a little rough. Of course, extra training is always going to be great too if you can get a seminar.
What about computerized resumes? There's one out, Winway, I think it's Winway Resume or WinRes or whatever. You just kind of click, 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 and it'll adjust it. I think, who was it, Peter or Jim, who was talking about, you know, they've seen it, put the date on the left, put the date on the right. This will let you do anything you want. You recommend that at all?
From what I've heard of those, they're mostly formatting type software. Shows you how to format it well, and that's real good. But from that, I would just use a book for that. I mean, you can glean that from any book. If you have any sort of word processing program, will do well for that. Plus, with a book, you get more ideas of wordings and phrases from actual resumes. Just plagiarize them right out of the samples and use them in your own.
So we can copy from your book?
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
You heard it, folks. Joe in Ohio, hi.
Hello. I transferred from one college to another college and subsequently earned my degree. Is it necessary for me to list the previous college on my resume?
Well, yeah, I would say that too. I would definitely put in your classes there if they're any way related to what you want to be doing.
Is there a reason you wouldn't?
Well, my grades at the previous university were not that good, and the coursework I took there wasn't really relevant to my career.
But you did get a degree from the second school.
Yes.
Right. Does it matter?
I actually, in my position, I have a BA degree, and I took other classes at another college. I never put those on there. I just go ahead and put the BA degree because I don't have a lot of room left on mine. But if you want to develop that, if there's a bunch of classes that you took, I mean, if you have room, by all means, just go ahead and put them on there. You know, but I wouldn't let that push you in another page.
Right. Larry in Pennsylvania, hi. Larry?
Yes.
Go ahead.
How are you?
Good. Good.
Yes, I'm been a healthcare practitioner for the last 15 years in private practice, and I'm going to be graduating from an MBA degree in April of 1995. And quite frankly, all I've done for the last 15 years is private practice. And I really didn't know how to put together a resume showing my capabilities outside of effectively managing a private practice for the last 15 years.
Are you a doctor?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And what exactly do you want to get into now?
Something in strategic management, somewhere in the healthcare field, outside of private practice.
Well, you've still got, obviously, the healthcare background. You know the terminologies, how the business is happening, I mean, in that business. I would talk about management of your own staff in your office, of course, running the whole operation, doing the books, setting up the whole practice that you were running. I mean, that's management right there. I think that'd be very real.
I would imagine that they'd be willing to cut him some slack, given the MD after his name and then the MBA thereafter.
Yeah, that should help.
Yeah, we've got to leave it there. Always a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Speaking with Stephen Provenzano, author of Top Secret Resumes. A reminder, the advice given on Money Talk comes from our guest and not CNBC. Well, last year's flooding in the Midwest cost the government billions in cleanup